Welcome. Now it's time to leave all the sounds of the outside world and the fatigue of the day beyond the door. Choose the most comfortable position for yourself. Gently close your eyes and take a deep breath. In a moment, I will take you millions of years into the past, to a peaceful valley where time flows very slowly and the stars shine more brightly. There you will hear the breathing of giants and feel the coolness of the river. If you're ready, our journey is beginning. Arrival, the sun was already low when the valley revealed itself. Not suddenly, but the way quiet things do. Gradually, without asking for attention. Light stretched long and pale across open land, softening every edge it touched. The air carried warmth that was no longer sharp, only lingering, like a memory that had not yet faded. Nothing moved quickly. Nothing needed to. The valley lay wide and open, cradled by distant hills that rose gently, never sharply, as if they had decided long ago that steepness was unnecessary. Their slopes were covered in grasses that bent easily with the wind, creating slow waves that traveled from one end of the land to the other. The motion was steady and patient, repeating itself without urgency. At the edge of the valley, a human figure stood still. The person did not rush forward. There was no reason to. Feet rested on firm ground, feeling the subtle warmth left behind by the sun. Breathing was slow, matching the pace of the land itself. The valley did not demand entry, it allowed it quietly. From this vantage point, the sounds arrived before the details. Wind moving through tall grass, a distant, steady flow of water somewhere below. Insects humming softly, their rhythm even and unbroken. These sounds did not compete with one another. They layered gently, like thin blankets settling into place. As the figure began to walk, each step was measured and calm. The ground sloped downward gradually, offering no obstacles, no surprises. Small stones pressed into the soles of worn sandals, smooth from time and weather. The path, if it could be called that, was simply where the grass had learned to bend more often. Far ahead, shapes moved. They were large, but their size carried no weight of danger. Long necks rose and fell slowly above the grasses, silhouetted against the soft gold of the late afternoon. The dinosaurs grazed in unhurried arcs, heads lowering to feed, lifting again to breathe and look around. Their movements were broad and gentle, like clouds drifting across the steady sky. The humans stopped again, not out of caution, but out of respect for the quiet balance already in place. There was space enough for everyone. The dinosaurs did not react. They did not need to. The presence of a single human was part of the valley's long routine, as ordinary as wind or shadow. One of the largest lifted its head slightly, not to stare, but simply as part of its slow cycle of movement. Its eye reflected light without curiosity or concern. After a moment, it returned to grazing. The valley breathed. Grasses whispered against one another. The air shifted, cooler now, brushing skin lightly. Somewhere closer than before, water moved over stone, a soft and repeating sound that invited listening without effort. Walking resumed. The human followed the land as it opened further, revealing the valley floor in layers. Patches of darker green marked damp earth near the river's unseen bends. Lighter grasses caught more sun, their tips glowing faintly. Occasional clusters of low plants added texture to the ground, their leaves thick and calm, holding on to warmth. Each step felt familiar, even if it had never been taken before. Time in the valley did not measure itself in moments or goals. It moved in cycles, light shifting, shadows stretching, breaths taken and released. The human shoulders relaxed naturally, as though the body remembered this place even if the mind did not. Closer now, the dinosaurs' presence became clearer. Their skin held muted colors, soft browns, gentle grays, hints of green that mirrored the land itself. Nothing was bright. Nothing stood apart. They belonged to the valley in the same way stones and trees did. One dinosaur shifted its weight, settling more comfortably. Another took a few slow steps forward, the grass flattening beneath its feet and then slowly rising again once it passed. The land accepted each movement without protest. The human sat down on a smooth rock, warmed by the sun earlier in the day. The stone held heat gently, offering it back without burning. Hands rested on knees. Breathing slowed further. From this seated place, details became clearer. A bird crossed the sky, gliding rather than flapping, disappearing behind a hill. Insects moved in small patterns near the grass tops, catching light for brief moments before fading back into shadow. The wind changed direction slightly, bringing with it the faint scent of water and earth. Nothing needed to be done. The dinosaurs continued their grazing, unbothered. Their tails moved lazily, brushing grass aside. Occasionally a low sound emerged. Not a call, not a warning, but simply the sound of breath passing through large bodies at rest. It was steady and grounding. The sun lowered another small degree. Light softened further, turning the valley into a place of long shapes and gentle contrast. Shadows stretched but never sharpened. The human leaned back slightly, letting hands press into the warm stone behind, feeling its steady presence. The valley had room for stillness. Minutes passed, or perhaps longer. Time did not insist on being counted. The river's sound grew clearer as attention drifted toward it, a constant, reassuring murmur. Somewhere, water curved around stone again and again, repeating the same motion it always had. A dinosaur lay down. The movement was slow and careful, a large body folding into the grass with patience. The ground received it, compressing slightly, then settling. Another followed, not because it had to, but because the day was easing toward rest. The human watched without staring. There was no line dividing observer and observed here. Presence was shared, not exchanged. The valley held all of it. The human, the dinosaurs, the grasses, the lowering sun, as parts of one wide, quiet arrangement. As evening approached, the air cooled just enough to be noticed. Skin felt the difference, welcomed it. The human adjusted posture slightly, pulling a simple cloth closer, though there was no chill, only change. Change here was gentle. The wind slowed, insects quieted, then resumed at a softer volume. The dinosaurs' movements became fewer. Longer pauses settling between each shift. The human's breathing matched the rhythm unconsciously. Above, the sky began its slow transition, colors deepening without drama. Pale gold softened into muted amber, then into something closer to blue-gray near the horizon. Nothing ended. Nothing began. The valley simply continued being what it was. A wide, quiet place where humans and gentle dinosaurs shared space without effort, where the land guided every movement toward calm. And as the light continued to fade, the valley held its calm, preparing, slowly and patiently, for night. The river's long bend. The river revealed itself gradually as everything in the valley did. It did not announce its presence with sudden sound or sharp movement. Instead, its voice grew clearer, step by step, a low and continuous murmur that blended with the wind and the distant breathing of large bodies at rest. The human rose from the warm stone and followed that sound without hurry, letting the land guide the way. The path curved gently downward, shaped more by habit than design. Grass grew thinner here, pressed by many quiet crossings over time. The air changed as well, cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and smooth stone. Each breath felt deeper, fuller, as if the valley itself was breathing alongside. The river bent wide through the valley floor, looping back on itself in a long, patient curve. Its surface reflected the soft evening sky, broken only by slow ripples where water met stone or reed. Nothing rushed. Even the current moved with a calm consistency, never pulling too hard, never resisting. Near the bank, the ground darkened, rich with moisture. Small plants clustered close, their leaves thick and calm, holding tiny beads of water that caught the fading light. The human stepped closer and stopped again, listening. Dinosaurs were already there. They stood at a respectful distance from one another, large shapes arranged loosely along the river's edge. Some lowered their heads to drink, drawing water slowly, lifting again with steady breaths. Others simply stood, bodies still, eyes half-lidded, enjoying the coolness rising from the river. No one crowded the water. There was space for everyone, and everyone seemed to know it. The human moved closer, careful but unafraid, and knelt at a quieter section of the bank. Fingers touched the surface, sending out gentle circles that expanded and faded. The water was cool, steady, familiar. It flowed over skin and passed without pause, unconcerned with the brief contact. A dinosaur nearby shifted its weight, the ground responding softly beneath it. The sound was low and unremarkable, like the settling of a hill. Its long neck curved down toward the water, and for a moment its reflection stretched across the surface, elongated, wavering, then broken by ripples. The reflection reformed. The human filled a simple vessel slowly, letting the water rise without splashing. Each movement was deliberate, smooth. When the vessel was full, it was set aside, not carried away yet, simply resting on the earth as part of the scene. The river continued, sounds layered gently here, water moving, breath flowing in and out of large chests, insects hovering near the reeds. None of these sounds stood apart. They existed together, steady and predictable. The sky above the river mirrored the valley's calm. Colors softened further, pale blues deepening as the sun slipped lower behind the hills. Light skimmed the water's surface, creating long, quiet lines that drifted with the current. One dinosaur finished drinking and lifted its head, droplets falling back into the river in slow succession. The sound was barely there, a soft punctuation in the steady flow. After a moment, the dinosaur stepped back, making room without intention, simply following its own unhurried rhythm. Another took its place. The human noticed how naturally the movements aligned, as though guided by an unspoken understanding. No signals were exchanged. No attention was demanded. Each being followed the same quiet rule. Move when ready, rest when ready, wait when needed. Time loosened its hold. The human sat near the bank, feet resting on cool ground. The river's breath seemed to slow everything further, inviting stillness. Watching the water required no effort. Ripples formed and disappeared, reflections shifted and returned, all without urgency. A light breeze passed over the river, lifting the surface slightly, carrying cool air toward the land. Leaves along the bank responded with a soft rustle, then settled again. The dinosaur's skin caught the breeze, subtle patterns moving across their broad sides as they breathed. The human closed their eyes briefly. Behind closed lids, the sounds remained the same. The river did not change when unseen. It continued its path, constant and reassuring. Breathing matched its pace naturally, slow in, slow out. When eyes opened again, the light had changed only slightly. Evening deepened without drawing attention to itself. Shadows near the bank grew longer, softer. The water darkened, reflecting more sky than sun now. A smaller dinosaur moved closer to the edge, careful and quiet. Its steps were light despite its size, placing feet where the ground was firm. It lowered its head and drank, pausing between each pull of water as if savoring the coolness. The human watched, calm and still. There was no need to look away. There was no need to engage. The moment existed comfortably as it was. The river bent away again further downstream, disappearing behind a rise in the land. The sound followed it, curving out of sight, promising continuity beyond what could be seen. It had always been there. It would continue to be. As the sky shifted closer to dusk, the activity along the bank slowed. Dinosaurs stepped back one by one, returning to nearby grasses or settling on the ground with long, careful movements. The human lifted the filled vessel and stood, feeling the weight steady and balanced. Before leaving, there was one last pause. The river flowed on, unchanged by the brief gathering at its edge. It accepted every presence without holding on to any. Water slipped past stones, around roots, under reflected sky, repeating its endless, quiet work. The human turned away slowly, carrying water and calm together, following the gentle slope back toward the open valley. Behind, the river continued its long bend, curving through the land as it always had, patient, steady, and at rest in its own motion. Meadow of tall grasses. The meadow began where the river's influence softened, where damp earth gave way to ground that felt lighter underfoot. The slope rose gently, and with it, the scent of water faded into the background, replaced by sun-warmed grass and the clean, dry sweetness of open air. The human walked slowly, letting the weight of the filled vessel settle against the rhythm of each step, letting the body find a pace that matched the valley's quiet. Here the grasses were taller. They reached up past the knee, sometimes higher, and when wind moved through them, it did not rush. It traveled in long, even waves, rolling across the meadow like a slow breath. The tips of the grass caught their remaining light, turning faintly gold, while the stems below stayed green and shaded. The whole meadow seemed to hold two kinds of time at once, bright at the top, cool and still beneath. The human stepped into the grass and felt it part around the legs, soft and persistent. Each strand bent and then returned, not quickly, but gradually, as if the meadow preferred to settle back into its shape without effort. The sound of walking changed too. On the riverbank, there had been stone and soft mud. Here there was the quiet whisper of grass against cloth, a faint brushing that made no sharp noise. The valley opened wider again. The dinosaurs were spread across the meadow in loose groups, though group felt like too firm a word for something so relaxed. They were simply near one another, occupying the same gentle space without needing closeness. Long-necked herbivores moved through the grasses with a slow certainty, their heads drifting from one patch of leaves to another, their bodies shifting like calm hills that had decided to wander. Some stood still for long moments, chewing slowly, eyes half-lidded. Others took a few steps and then paused again, as though each movement was chosen carefully, not because it required thought, but because there was no reason to hurry. The human stopped near the meadow's edge and lowered the vessel onto the ground. The water inside was still, a small mirrored surface that caught the sky. The human sat beside it, resting palms on the grass, feeling the warmth held close to the earth. In the tall grass, small life moved quietly. Insects traveled along stems, their paths steady and patient. A tiny beetle climbed upward, paused near a seed head, then continued. A pale moth drifted in an uncertain spiral, landing and lifting again, as if testing the air. None of these movements were dramatic. They were simply part of the meadow's texture. The human watched the dinosaurs with the same calm attention given to the insects, to the grass, to the shifting light. No creature here demanded focus. Everything was allowed to be seen in the same gentle way. A breeze arrived and passed. The tall grass leaned, then slowly rose again. The dinosaur's skin showed faint patterns in the changing light, subtle variations like weathered stone or bark. A long neck turned slightly, not toward the human, but toward a patch of leaves that caught the dinosaur's interest. Its mouth closed around the vegetation, pulled it free, and began the slow work of chewing. The sounds of chewing were soft, rhythmic, and surprisingly soothing. A quiet scrape, a pause, a deeper grind, then stillness again. It was the sound of a world where nourishment took time, where every action was steady. The human's breathing matched it, slow in, slow out. The meadow's warmth began to soften as the sun lowered further. The heat did not vanish. It simply shifted, becoming less direct, more like a gentle layer resting over the land. The human noticed the change in the way the air touched the face, in the way shadows gathered in the hollows between tufts of grass. Somewhere deeper in the meadow, a dinosaur lay down. The movement began as a subtle bend, then a careful lowering of weight. The body folded slowly, limbs tucked in with patience, the long neck lowering in an arc until the head could rest comfortably. The grass beneath flattened, then held. The dinosaur exhaled, and the sound was deep and low, like a distant drum softened by distance and air. Another dinosaur shifted nearer, then paused, then settled as well. Not because it had to, not because anything happened, simply because the day was drifting toward rest. And the meadow offered a place for that rest to happen naturally. The human reached for the vessel again, lifted it, and carried it a few steps further into the grass. A small patch of open ground appeared between two thicker clusters of stems. The human set the vessel down there, where it sat stable and quiet. Then the human stood and began to walk again, this time without a goal, only following the meadow's gentle invitations. The tall grass made the world feel close. Even though the valley was wide, within the meadow the grass created small corridors and soft walls. The horizon became less important. What mattered were the immediate details. The bend of a stem, the way a seed head trembled in the breeze, the faint sheen of dew beginning to form on shaded leaves as the air cooled. The human's hand brushed lightly against the grass tips as they walked, feeling the texture, fine, dry, slightly rough. Each touch was brief and calm. A small bird called once from somewhere near the forest edge. The call was not sharp, only clear, then gone. Silence returned immediately, not empty but full of gentle background sound. Insects, wind, distant water. The valley's quiet was never absolute. It was layered, soft, forgiving. A dinosaur passed nearby. It did not loom even though it was large. It simply moved through the grass, body swaying slightly with each step, feet placing themselves carefully. The ground did not tremble in a way that felt disruptive. It responded with a mild, steady firmness, as if it had grown used to such weight and learned how to hold it without complaint. The dinosaur's tail drifted behind it, brushing grass aside in a slow arc. The grass bent, and then, after the tail passed, rose again. Watching that simple action, the bend, the pass, the return, felt like watching a slow tide. The human stopped again, allowing space. The dinosaur did not look at the human. Its attention remained on the plants, on the feel of ground and air, on the steady rhythm of its own body. It plucked leaves, chewed, swallowed, and then took another step. The human felt no need to speak. In this valley, silence was not an absence. It was a shared agreement that nothing needed to be forced into shape. Sounds arrived when they arrived. They faded when they faded. Everything remained gentle. As dusk deepened, the light at the top of the grasses became more muted, less gold and more gray-blue. The meadow did not lose beauty. It changed its kind of beauty. Shadows grew softer, and the shapes of dinosaurs became more like calm silhouettes again, their outlines blending into the land. The air cooled enough that the human noticed it on the hands, not cold, only cooler. The human rubbed palms together slowly, then let them rest against the sides of the body beneath the cloth. The warmth there felt steady and reassuring. Nearby, a cluster of dinosaurs stood close to one another, but still not touching. Their presence created a sense of shelter, not because they formed a barrier, but because their slow breathing and stillness made the meadow feel even calmer. The human approached to a respectful distance and sat down in the grass, careful not to crush the taller stems too harshly. Sitting here, the human could hear the dinosaur's breath more clearly. Inhale, slow and deep. Exhale, long and steady. Between breaths, there was quiet. The human's own breathing naturally followed, slowing further. The chest rose and fell in an easy rhythm. The mind, if it tried to gather thoughts, found little to hold. The meadow did not offer urgency. It offered only the present moment, stretched wide and softened by light. A faint scent drifted through. Crushed grass, warm earth, something slightly sweet from flowering plants hidden among the stems. The scent was not strong, only there, like a gentle reminder that the land was alive in small ways as well as large. Somewhere, a small insect landed on the human's sleeve, stayed for a moment, then lifted away. The touch was so light it barely registered. It was a tiny echo of the meadow's overall gentleness. The human looked upward. Above the grass, the sky was changing again. The first hint of evening starlight was not visible yet, but the blue deepened, and the brightest part of the horizon softened toward dusky tones. Clouds, if they existed, were thin and far, like faint brush strokes. The dinosaurs remained calm. One shifted its stance, moving a foot to a more comfortable place. Another lowered its head to graze again, even though the light was fading, chewing slowly, unbothered. The human listened to the chewing, to the wind, to the distant river. The meadow felt like a lullaby, not a song but a pattern. Sway, breathe, chew, pause. Sway, breathe, chew, pause. The same sequence repeating without needing variation. The human lay back. The grass beneath formed a soft mattress, though the stems were tall. The human adjusted slightly, finding a comfortable hollow where the ground dipped just enough. The cloth beneath the head folded into a small cushion. Above, the grass tips moved gently, framing pieces of sky between them. From this position, the dinosaurs were partly hidden, seen as slow-moving shapes beyond the grass. Their outlines drifted and paused. Their presence was felt more than clearly seen, like the steady presence of hills. The human's eyes grew heavier, not with exhaustion, but with relaxation. The valley had a way of quieting the mind simply by continuing to be calm. The human watched the grass move, watched the light fade, listened to breath and wind. Even when a dinosaur took a few slow steps, the movement did not disturb the sense of rest. The sound of footsteps was soft, muffled by the grass and earth. The dinosaur's breathing remained steady, and that steadiness felt like a reassurance. The meadow cooled further. The air now carried the first suggestion of night, though it was still early. The human felt the coolness on the cheeks, the forehead, the hands. It was pleasant, like a gentle wash. In the distance, the river continued its patient voice. In the meadow, insects softened their hum, then returned at a lower volume. Somewhere near the forest edge, another bird called once, and then fell silent again. The human let the eyes close. Behind closed eyes, the valley did not disappear. It remained present through sound and sensation. Wind on grass, cool air, slow breathing of nearby dinosaurs. The mind could rest in these simple patterns. Sway, breathe, pause, sway, breathe, pause. And in that repeating calm, the meadow held the human and the gentle dinosaurs together, not in a story of events, but in a shared, quiet evening, slowly becoming night, without any need for change. The warm stone ridge. The meadow thinned gradually, the tall grasses giving way to shorter growth and patches of exposed earth. The human rose slowly, joints moving without stiffness, as though the valley itself had eased any remaining tension from the body. Nearby, the dinosaurs remained calm and unhurried, some still grazing, others resting where they had settled. There was no sense of leaving them behind, only of moving onward through the same shared quiet. Ahead, the land lifted into a low ridge of stone. It was not sharp or imposing. The stones rose gently from the earth, smooth and rounded, their surfaces shaped by time and weather rather than force. They had absorbed the day's warmth and now held it patiently, offering it back to the cooling air in a steady, even way. The ridge ran along one side of the valley like a resting spine, never interrupting the openness, only adding texture. The human approached at a slow pace, feet finding natural steps between stones and grass. The ground here felt firmer, more solid. Each footstep carried a quiet certainty, as if the land itself was supporting the movement without resistance. Dinosaurs were already on the ridge. Some stood near the stones, their large bodies angled to catch the last warmth radiating upward. Others had lowered themselves partially, resting against the rock with careful movements, letting heat ease into their broadsides. Their skin reflected the fading light softly, muted tones blending with stone and shadow. The human climbed a little higher, choosing a flat stone that had been warmed all afternoon. Sitting down, the difference was immediate. Heat rose gently through the cloth, not hot, only comforting, like a held memory of sunlight. Hands pressed against the stone surface, feeling its smoothness, its quiet solidity. The ridge offered a different kind of sound. Down in the meadow, grass and insects dominated. Here the sounds were deeper and more subdued. Wind passed over stone with a low whisper. The dinosaurs' breathing felt closer, more present, echoing faintly against the rock surfaces. Even the distant river seemed quieter from this vantage point, its voice softened by elevation. The human leaned back slightly, letting shoulders rest against the stone behind. The body relaxed into the warmth, breathing slow and even. From here, the valley spread out below in calm layers. Meadow, river bend, distant forest edge, all bathed in the last light of day. Shadows lengthened across the ridge. They did not stretch sharply. They simply grew, gently overtaking the lighter areas as the sun slipped lower behind the hills. The stones retained warmth longer than the earth, creating pockets of comfort that both humans and dinosaurs seemed to recognize instinctively. A dinosaur nearby shifted its weight, adjusting its stance against the stone. The movement was deliberate and slow, each step placed carefully. When it settled again, a long exhale followed, the sound deep and reassuring. Another dinosaur approached the ridge from the meadow, moving uphill without strain. Its steps were measured, unhurried. When it reached the stone, it paused, then lowered its body gradually, finding a place where rock and earth met comfortably. The human watched without focus, letting the scene wash over the senses rather than trying to hold any detail too tightly. The warmth of stone, the cooling air, the steady presence of large, gentle bodies, it all blended into a single feeling of rest. The sky changed again. Colors softened further, amber giving way to dusky blue. The brightest part of the horizon faded, leaving behind a smooth gradient that felt expansive and calm. Clouds, if present, were thin and distant, barely marking the sky's surface. The human noticed the temperature shift more clearly now. The air cooled around the face and hands, while the stone continued to offer warmth beneath. The contrast was comforting rather than sharp, like stepping into shade after sun. Hands rested on the stone, fingers tracing faint lines and shallow depressions left by time. The stone did not feel ancient in a dramatic way. It felt settled, content to remain as it was. The dinosaurs seemed to feel the same. They did not fidget. They did not search for better places. They stayed where warmth and space aligned naturally. Some closed their eyes halfway. Others kept them open, gazing without focus at the valley below. Breathing slowed across the ridge. The human's breath matched the rhythm of the nearest dinosaur. Slow in, slow out. The sound was not loud, but it was present, a steady reminder that life here moved at an unhurried pace. A light breeze crossed the ridge, brushing skin and stone alike. It carried the scent of grass from below, mixed now with the mineral smell of warm rock. The breeze passed, and the air settled again. Time continued without marking itself. Minutes slipped by unnoticed. The human shifted slightly, finding an even more comfortable position against the stone. Muscles loosened further, as if the body were slowly sinking into the ridge itself. The dinosaurs remained calm. One stretched its neck slowly, lifting its head higher for a moment, then lowering it again. The movement was unforced, smooth, like a long yawn expressed through the entire body. Afterward, it grew still once more. The ridge seemed to hold the day's final energy. Even as the sun disappeared fully behind the hills, the stones retained their warmth. The human felt it beneath the palms, along the back, through the cloth. It was not something that demanded attention. It was simply there, steady and kind. The valley below darkened slightly. Details softened, outlines blending. The meadow's grasses were now more suggestion than shape, their motion still visible but less defined. The river reflected less light, becoming a darker ribbon that still whispered quietly through the land. On the ridge, silhouettes formed. The dinosaurs became darker shapes against the sky, their outlines still gentle, still familiar. The human's own shadow merged with the stone, indistinct and calm. A faint sound came from the forest edge far below, perhaps a night insect beginning its rhythm. It was not sudden or loud. It joined the existing layers of sound without disruption. The human closed their eyes for a moment. Warmth below, cool air above, steady breath nearby. Nothing more was needed. When eyes opened again, the sky had deepened further, the first suggestion of night fully present. The stars were not yet visible, but the space for them had been prepared. A wide, quiet darkness settling gently into place. The dinosaurs remained restful, No one moved away. No one arrived in haste. The ridge felt like a shared resting place, chosen not by decision, but by comfort. The human adjusted posture once more, turning slightly to face the open valley. From this angle, the land felt expansive and safe, held by hills and sky alike. The sense of belonging was subtle, not emotional, simply factual. This was a place where resting made sense. The stone continued to release its warmth slowly, evenly. The air continued to cool at the same gentle pace. The valley continued its quiet routines, and on the warm stone ridge, humans and gentle dinosaurs rested together, letting the day complete itself without ceremony, without conclusion, only a gradual easing into the calm that would soon become night. Forest edge and fern shade. The ridge did not end abruptly. It softened back into the land, its stones thinning and slipping beneath soil and root. The human rose slowly, carrying no urgency, and followed the gentle downward curve toward the forest edge. The air changed again as the trees drew nearer, cooler, layered with the scent of leaves, damp earth, and shaded growth that had never known the full weight of sun. The forest did not close in, it opened. At the edge, tall trees stood with space between them, trunks wide and calm, their bark textured but smooth to the eye. Light filtered through high branches in long, angled bands, touching the ground in patches that shifted slowly as the breeze moved the canopy above. Nothing flickered quickly. The shadows drifted. Ferns covered the ground here, wide and patient, their fronds arching outward like open hands. They grew thickest where the light softened, creating a low green layer that held moisture and quiet. When wind passed through, the ferns responded with a subtle ripple, then settled again. Dinosaurs moved easily among the trees. Their size did not disturb the forest. Paths between trunks were wide, the ground firm. Long necks reached upward to browse on higher leaves, movements slow and careful. The sound of leaves being pulled free was gentle, a soft tearing followed by steady chewing. Smaller herbivores remained closer to the ground, stepping between ferns without crushing them, as though the land had learned how to make space for each footfall. The human stepped into the shade and felt the difference immediately. The warmth of stone and open grass gave way to a coolness that rested lightly on skin. Not cold, just calm. The ground beneath was springy, layered with leaf litter and soft soil. Each step pressed down slightly, then returned, like a quiet response. The vessel of water was set down near a tree whose roots curved above the ground like slow waves frozen in place. The human rested a hand against the bark, feeling its texture, firm, dry, alive. The tree did not feel separate from the ridge or the meadow. It felt like another expression of the same patience. Birdsong emerged softly here, not sharp or frequent, one call at a time, spaced widely, allowing silence to return between sounds. The birds did not compete. They simply marked their presence, then rested again. A dinosaur nearby lowered its head into the ferns, selecting leaves with care. The fronds bent beneath its touch, brushing against its skin, then slowly lifting again once released. The movement was unhurried, respectful, as though both plant and animal expected one another to move gently. The human sat near the base of a tree, back resting against the trunk. The coolness of shade spread through the body, easing any remaining warmth from the day into a comfortable balance. Hands rested on knees. Breathing slowed further. In the forest edge, sound felt closer. Breath, leaf movement, the soft scrape of bark as a dinosaur shifted position. Each noise carried clearly but quietly, never echoing, never sharp. The space absorbed sound rather than reflecting it. Light continued to fade. The bands of sun that reached the forest floor grew thinner, then fewer. Ferns held on to the last of it, their surfaces catching a muted glow before slipping back into shadow. The human watched this change without trying to follow it, letting it happen at its own pace. A dinosaur settled nearby. The movement was slow and careful, a large body lowering itself between trees where the ground was open. The ferns flattened beneath its weight, then rested. Its breathing deepened as it found a comfortable position, the rise and fall steady and reassuring. Another dinosaur remained standing, neck curved gently as it browsed higher leaves. The leaves rustled softly, then went still again. Nothing startled, nothing hurried. The human closed their eyes briefly. The forest did not disappear. It remained present through sound and sensation. The faint drip of moisture from a leaf, the slow breath of a resting dinosaur, the cool air brushing skin lightly. When eyes opened again, the forest looked darker, deeper, though not enclosed. Space remained. Paths between trees were still visible, softened by shadow rather than hidden. The first hints of nightlife appeared. Insects began their quiet rhythm, a low hum that rose gently and then settled into a steady pattern. It did not overwhelm the other sounds. It joined them. The human adjusted position slightly, pulling the cloth closer. The tree trunk behind remained firm and supportive. The ground beneath remained soft. The balance between cool and comfort felt complete. Dinosaurs continued their calm routines. One finished feeding and took a few slow steps, then paused. Another shifted closer to a tree, leaning gently against its trunk without pressing. The forest accepted their presence easily, branches and leaves moving only as much as needed. The sky beyond the forest edge darkened further, visible through gaps between trunks. The color deepened into a quiet blue-gray, preparing for night without announcement. The human felt no need to move. The forest edge offered shelter without confinement. It felt like a place meant for rest, for waiting, for being without purpose. The human listened to breath. Own breath, nearby breath, the imagined breath of the forest itself. A faint breeze passed through the canopy, stirring leaves high above. The movement traveled downward slowly, reaching the lower branches and ferns last. By the time it reached the ground, it was barely more than a suggestion. Stillness returned. The dinosaurs remained untroubled. Their presence felt grounding, like living hills arranged among trees. The human felt small in size, but not in belonging. Everything fit. Time loosened further. Moments blended. There was no clear line between one and the next. The forest edge held the day gently as it faded, smoothing the transition into night. Somewhere deeper in the forest, an owl called once. Low, soft, brief. Silence followed, full and calm. The human's eyes grew heavy again, not from fatigue, but from the deep comfort of the space. The body rested easily against the tree, supported by earth and wood alike. The forest edge breathed, leaves, ferns, trunks, soil, dinosaurs, human, all part of the same quiet system, slowing together as night approached. There was no need to decide what came next. The valley would guide that in its own time. And so, beneath the fern shade at the forest edge, humans and gentle dinosaurs rested together, held by cool air and soft ground, letting the evening deepen without resistance. Shared quiet at the watering place. The path back toward the water revealed itself slowly, as it always did. It was not a clear line, only a subtle easing of the ground, a direction suggested by the way the land sloped and the way sound traveled. The human rose from the forest edge and followed that suggestion without thought, carrying the calm gathered beneath the trees. The air shifted as the forest thinned again. Cool shades softened into open evening air. The scent of leaves gave way to the familiar mixture of grass and water. Ahead, the river's voice grew clearer, steady and unchanged. It was the same sound as before, and hearing it again felt like returning to something already known. The watering place lay in a broad, shallow curve of the river, where the banks sloped gently and stones beneath the surface were smooth and visible. The water moved slowly here, spreading out, offering itself without force. This was where routines repeated, not because they had to, but because they worked. Dinosaurs approached from different directions. Some came from the meadow, others from the forest edge, their paths crossing without concern. They arrived gradually, spacing themselves naturally along the bank. No one hurried forward, no one waited impatiently. Each body moved when ready. The human arrived last and paused at a distance, observing the familiar rhythm. A large dinosaur stepped into the water first, placing its feet carefully. The surface rippled outward in slow, even circles. It lowered its head and drank, lifting again after a few steady pulls, water trailing from its mouth back into the river. The sound of droplets returning was soft, almost rhythmic. Another dinosaur followed, stopping a short distance away. It waited, not because it was required to, but because there was space and time enough for waiting. The river did not diminish by being shared. It remained steady, offering the same coolness to each. The human knelt near the edge and placed the vessel beside the water. Fingers dipped into the river again, feeling the familiar coolness. The touch sent out small ripples that crossed those made by the dinosaur's movements, meeting and passing without disruption. The watering place felt balanced. Each presence fit easily into the space. Large bodies and small movements coexisted without tension. The river accepted them all, moving around feet, stones, and reflections with the same quiet patience. The light was low now. Evening had deepened into a gentle dusk. The sky reflected faintly on the water's surface, its colors muted and calm. Shadows along the bank grew softer, blending into one another. The water seemed darker, deeper, though its movement remained easy to follow. The dinosaurs drank slowly. Between each lowering and lifting of heads, there were pauses, long enough to feel restful, not empty. Breathing was steady, bodies remained relaxed. No one stayed longer than needed, yet no one left too quickly. The human filled the vessel again, letting the water rise without sound. When it was full, it was set aside once more, resting on damp earth. The human remained kneeling, hands resting loosely, watching the river continue. A breeze passed over the water, cooling the air further. It lifted faint ripples that traveled downstream, catching the last light before fading. Reeds along the edge swayed gently, then returned to stillness. One dinosaur stepped back from the water and moved aside, creating space. Another took its place. The exchange required no signals, no acknowledgement. It was simply the way things happened here. The human noticed how often the same movements repeated. Lower head, drink, lift, pause, step back. Each repetition was soothing, like a slow pattern that did not need variation. Watching it felt like listening to a steady rhythm that the body could follow without thought. Insects hovered near the water now, their presence more noticeable as the light faded. They moved lightly, never settling for long. Their hum joined the river's voice and the soft sounds of breathing. The dinosaurs' reflections stretched across the water's surface, elongated and wavering. When ripples passed, the reflections broke apart, then slowly reformed. The human watched this happen again and again, finding comfort in the way nothing stayed broken for long. A dinosaur finished drinking and remained standing near the bank, eyes half-lidded, breathing slow. Its tail rested on the ground, unmoving. Another dinosaur nearby lay down carefully, folding into the earth with patience, choosing to rest close to the water. The human shifted positions slightly, settling more comfortably on the damp ground. The coolness of the earth beneath contrasted gently with the warmth held in the body. Hands rested on thighs, shoulders loosened, sound traveled clearly here. Every small movement, water touching stone, breath passing through large lungs, a reed brushing another, felt close and present, yet never loud. The watering place absorbed sound, spreading it evenly rather than letting it gather. The sky darkened further. The first stars were not yet visible, but the space for them had opened. The water reflected less light now, becoming a smooth, dark surface, broken only by gentle ripples. The dinosaurs' activity slowed. Fewer heads lowered to drink. More bodies remained still, resting. The need for water had been met, and there was no reason to linger beyond comfort. Still, no one left abruptly. The transition toward rest happened gradually, like everything else in the valley. The human remained until the rhythm naturally quieted. When the last dinosaur stepped back from the water, the river continued unchanged. It flowed on, unconcerned with who had come or gone. The human stood and lifted the vessel, feeling its familiar weight. Before turning away, there was one last moment of stillness. The watering place rested in dusk, empty of movement but full of presence. Water moved. Insects hummed softly. The bank held the marks of many quiet visits, already fading. The human turned and followed the path back toward the open valley, carrying water and calm together once more. Behind, the river continued its patient work, ready to welcome the same gentle routines again whenever they returned. Nightfall, under a calm sky, the valley darkened without pause, as though it had been preparing for this moment all day. The human walked away from the river slowly, the sound of water growing softer behind, blending into the wider quiet of the land. With each step, the sky above deepened in color, the remaining light thinning evenly, never fading all at once. Open space returned. The meadow lay wide again, now softened by dusk. The tall grasses that had caught sunlight earlier were silhouettes now, their motion still visible, but gentler, more suggested than seen. The air cooled evenly across the valley, settling into a calm that felt complete rather than empty. Dinosaurs were already resting. Some lay in the open meadow, their large forms shaped into low, steady outlines against the darkening ground. Others rested closer to the ridge or the forest edge, choosing places where warmth or shelter felt right. None were fully asleep yet. Breathing remained steady and aware, bodies relaxed but present. The human stopped in an open area where grass was shorter and the ground even. The vessel was set down carefully. The human stood still for a moment, looking upward. The sky held the valley gently. Clouds, if they existed, were thin and distant, barely interrupting the deepening blue. The horizon softened further, its last traces of light dissolving into shadow. There was no sharp boundary between day and night here. One simply eased into the other. A light breeze passed across the meadow. It moved the grass in slow waves, the sound barely more than a whisper. It brushed against the human skin, cool and clean, carrying the scent of earth and distant water. The breeze passed on, leaving the air settled and still again. The human lay down. The ground was cool now, but not uncomfortable. The cloth beneath the body softened the contact. The human adjusted slightly, turning to face the open sky, arms resting loosely, breathing slow and easy. Nearby, a dinosaur exhaled deeply. The sound was low and long, like a quiet sigh released without effort. Another followed, then another, until the meadow seemed to breathe as a whole, a shared rhythm moving through many bodies at rest. Insects began their night pattern. The hum was steady, not loud, forming a soft background that filled the spaces between other sounds. It rose and fell gently, never breaking the calm. The first star appeared. It was faint at first, a small point of light that did not demand attention. Then another appeared nearby. Slowly, without ceremony, more followed, scattered across the sky in no hurry to complete their pattern. The human watched them without counting. Each star was simply there, a quiet presence added to the vastness above. The sky felt deep and open, stretching far beyond the valley, yet still connected to it in a way that felt natural and safe. The dinosaurs remained still. Some shifted slightly as they settled further into rest, adjusting limbs or tails. Each movement was careful and slow, designed not to disturb the ground or one another. When they finished adjusting, stillness returned. The air cooled a little more. The human noticed it on the face, the hands. The body responded by curling slightly, finding a position that held warmth comfortably. Breathing deepened, matching the slow rhythm of the meadow. The sounds of the day faded fully. No birds called now. No movement disturbed the grass beyond the gentle sway of wind. The river's voice was distant, barely perceptible, like a memory rather than a presence. The valley held night easily. Stars continued to appear, filling the sky gradually. The moon, still low, had not yet risen, leaving the starlight to rest lightly over the land. Shadows were soft and indistinct, merging with one another rather than forming sharp lines. The dinosaurs' silhouettes were calm and familiar. They did not feel large in the darkness. They felt grounding, like the land itself. Their presence made the meadow feel sheltered, not because they blocked anything, but because their stillness was reassuring. The human's eyes grew heavy, not with exhaustion, but with comfort. The steady patterns, the breathing, the insect hum, the slow movement of air required no attention. They existed whether watched or not. The human closed their eyes. Behind closed eyes, the valley continued unchanged. The sounds remained consistent. The ground remained steady. The sky, unseen, continued its quiet work above. Time loosened further. Minutes passed, or perhaps longer. It did not matter. The night did not push forward. It simply held. A dinosaur nearby shifted its tail slightly, then became still again. The sound was soft, easily absorbed by grass and earth. The movement did not disturb the overall calm. The human's breathing slowed to its deepest rhythm of the day, in and out, long and even. Each breath felt supported by the land, by the air, by the shared presence of the valley's life. The moon began to rise slowly behind the distant hills. At first, its light was faint, barely noticeable. It did not flood the valley. It only added a subtle glow, lifting edges and outlines gently without breaking the darkness. The human opened their eyes briefly. The sky had changed, but not dramatically. The moon's light touched the tops of grasses, the curved backs of resting dinosaurs, the edges of stones. Everything remained calm. Satisfied, the human closed their eyes again. The valley did not require watching. It continued to exist quietly, safely, steadily. And under the calm sky, with stars above and gentle giants resting nearby, night settled fully into place, soft, unbroken, and peaceful, carrying everyone within it toward deeper rest. Moonlight over sleeping giants. Moonlight reached the valley slowly, as if it were careful not to disturb anything already at rest. It did not arrive as brightness, but as clarity, a gentle lifting of shapes from darkness. The meadow remained quiet, held in the deep calm of night, while the moon rose just enough to touch the land with soft silver. The dinosaurs slept. Their great bodies rested fully now, limbs folded, tails curved naturally along the ground. Breathing was slow and deep, visible in the steady rise and fall of broad sides. Each breath moved the grass slightly, a small reminder of life continuing even in stillness. The human lay nearby, unmoving except for breath. The ground beneath felt cool and supportive. The cloth covering the body held warmth gently, neither heavy nor light. The night air rested on exposed skin like a calm hand, present but never cold. Moonlight traced quiet outlines. The backs of dinosaurs caught it first, rounded shapes glowing faintly. The edges of necks and tails softened into pale lines, then faded again where shadow took over. Nothing appeared sharp, everything blended. The grass shimmered lightly where dew had begun to form. Tiny droplets clung to stems and leaves, catching moonlight for brief moments before becoming invisible again. The dew did not sparkle. It simply existed, subtle and steady. The insect's hum continued. It was quieter now, lower and more even, like a distant memory of sound rather than something immediate. It filled the space without drawing attention. The human's breathing matched the valley's rhythm. Inhale, slow. Exhale, long. Between breaths, there was no urgency. The body felt heavy in a comforting way, fully supported by earth. A dinosaur shifted slightly in sleep. The movement was minimal, a leg adjusting, a tail settling into a more comfortable curve. The sound was soft, quickly absorbed by grass and soil. Afterward, stillness returned completely. The moon rose a little higher. Its light reached the river in the distance, turning the surface into a faint ribbon of moving silver. The sound of water remained unchanged, steady and calm, just audible enough to remind the valley that motion continued somewhere beyond sight. The human did not open their eyes. There was no need to confirm the world's presence. It was felt through sound, through temperature, through the gentle pressure of ground beneath the body. The forest edge stood quiet. Trees formed dark pillars against the lighter sky, their leaves barely moving. Ferns lay still, holding moisture, reflecting nothing. The forest seemed to sleep as deeply as the meadow. Above, stars remained scattered across the sky. They did not shift noticeably. They did not demand attention. They rested where they were, distant and constant. The dinosaur's breath created a slow pattern, a deep inhale, then a longer exhale. The sound was low and comforting, like wind moving through a wide space. Each sleeping body contributed to the rhythm, creating a shared pulse that moved through the meadow. The human felt safe within it. Safety here did not come from vigilance or protection. It came from consistency, from knowing that nothing sudden would happen, that nothing needed to change. Moonlight continued its quiet work. It moved across the valley as the earth turned, touching different surfaces without preference. Stone, grass, skin, scale, all received the same gentle glow. The human's thoughts, if they appeared at all, drifted away easily. There was nothing to hold on to, nothing to solve, nothing to anticipate. The valley offered no story to follow, only a steady present moment. A faint breeze passed through. It moved slowly, barely stirring the grass. It cooled the air slightly, then passed on, leaving everything as it had been. The dinosaurs did not stir. Their sleep was deep and untroubled. Large chests rose and fell. Muscles remained relaxed. The land accepted their weight without complaint. The human's body sank a little deeper into rest. Muscles loosened further. The breath slowed just a little more. The mind softened around the edges, becoming less defined. The moon reached its gentle height, not high enough to brighten the valley fully, only enough to outline it, to reassure it. Light and shadow balanced perfectly, neither overpowering the other. In this balance, the valley rested. Human and dinosaur, grass and stone, river and sky, all held within the same quiet arrangement. Nothing stood apart. Nothing moved ahead of the moment. Time passed without measure. Night remained deep and calm. The valley continued breathing slowly, evenly, carrying every resting form toward deeper stillness. And beneath the moonlight, among sleeping giants, the quiet held, soft, unbroken, and endlessly peaceful. Before dawn, mist and first birds, the valley rested in its quietest hour, a time that belonged neither fully to night nor yet to morning. Darkness still covered the land, but it no longer felt deep or heavy. It felt thin, like a blanket slowly being lifted without sound. Mist rose first from the river. It gathered close to the water's surface, pale and light, drifting upward in slow layers. The movement was so gentle it was easy to miss at first. There was no rolling, no rushing. The mist simply appeared, then widened, following the natural curves of the land. As it drifted away from the river, it spread across the low ground, settling into hollows and shallow dips. Grass disappeared into it from the bottom up, stems fading softly until only their tips remained visible, hovering above the white veil. The valley seemed to shrink in a comforting way. Distances softened, edges blurred. The dinosaurs slept on. Their great bodies lay heavy and calm against the earth, limbs folded comfortably, tails curved where they had settled hours before. Breathing remained deep and even, slow enough to feel almost synchronized with the land itself. Each inhale lifted a broadside slightly. Each exhale released it again. Mist flowed around them without resistance. It traced the outlines of their legs and bellies, slipped beneath resting tails, then continued on. Dew clung to their skin and to the grass beneath, tiny droplets forming silently. Nothing stirred them. Sleep here was steady and untroubled. The human lay nearby, still and warm. Sleep had lightened, but not broken. The body remained relaxed, breathing slow and quiet. The cool air touched the face and hand, but the ground beneath held warmth gently, balancing the chill. The mist brushed across skin without sensation, present but unobtrusive. Sound was minimal. The insects of the night had fallen quiet, their hum fading into absence. The river continued its distant murmur, steady and unchanged, a soft foundation beneath the silence. Then a single bird called. The sound was brief and gentle, not loud enough to startle. It rose once from the forest edge, clear and calm, then faded immediately. Silence returned, complete and unbroken. The dinosaurs did not stir. The human did not wake. Mist continued to drift. It moved slowly across the meadow, lifting and settling. Never thick enough to obscure completely, never thin enough to vanish. The valley felt wrapped, held in a soft layer that muted everything without hiding it. Moments passed, then another bird called. This time the sound came from a different direction, slightly farther away. It answered the first without urgency. The call was not a signal, not an alarm, just a presence marking itself gently against the quiet. Breathing continued. Dinosaur breath, human breath, the valley's breath, imagined but felt. The sky lightened almost imperceptibly. Not brighter, only less dark. The deepest blue softened at the horizon, though the stars still remained overhead, steady and unchanged. Moonlight faded quietly, giving way to the first suggestion of morning. Mist thickened slightly near the ground. It hugged the earth, turning the meadow into a landscape of gentle layers. Dinosaurs appeared and disappeared within it, depending on angle and distance, their forms emerging briefly before softening again. A dinosaur shifted in its sleep. The movement was small, a leg adjusting, a tail settling more comfortably. The sound was barely there, absorbed immediately by grass and mist. Afterward, stillness returned. The human's breathing changed subtly, not waking, just adjusting. An inhale deepened, then returned to its slow rhythm. The body remained at rest, held easily by the ground. Bird song grew slightly more frequent, still sparse, still widely spaced. One call here, another there. Each sound arrived, then left room for silence again. The valley accepted them without change. The river's mist began to thin. It did not vanish all at once. It lifted slowly, drawing upward as the air warmed by the smallest degree. Dew remained on grass and skin, cooling surfaces gently. The sky continued its quiet shift. Darkness gave way to a softer blue-gray. The land beneath remained calm and unchanged, resting in the space between night and day. The dinosaurs remained at ease. Sleep loosened, but did not release them yet. Breathing stayed deep. Bodies remained heavy against the earth. There was no reason to rise quickly. The human lay still, awareness beginning to return without thought. Not awake, not asleep, simply present. Birdsong continued to build, one voice at a time, never overlapping too closely, never breaking the calm. The sounds felt like gentle markers, reminding the valley that morning would arrive when ready. Mist drifted higher now. The meadow slowly reappeared, grasses revealing themselves stem by stem. Shapes became clearer, though still soft. The dinosaurs' outlines sharpened slightly, familiar and calm. The valley breathed in again. Before dawn, before movement, before routine resumed, everything rested together in this quiet space. Mist lifting, birds calling softly, breath steady and slow. Nothing ended, nothing began. Mooring approached gently, exactly as it always did. Don't forget to follow and like the video. Good night.